Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML. Today we are on episode 57. I think I will let Chris introduce the book.
Yeah, actually, we were just real fast. Wanted to comment on the fact that we're on book 57, which feels like, we've been doing this for 4 months now. And we were just talking about this right before. It feels like we just started this, but at the same time, it's kind of impressive to see, we've gone through 57 of these conversations so far already, it's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm having a great time. Any thoughts on where we're at so far? It's been pretty cool.
I mean, to me, it doesn't change anything. It's actually pretty amazing when you look back at it and see how much you've done so far. But my mindset is still the same. It's the same day every day. It's great to get together and talk about stuff, just shoot the breeze with you. And to me, for me, it's like I don't look forward, I don't look backward, because today is the present, and every day I like to get together with the people that I respect and talk about things that matters to us. And to me, that's where I'm at. So I don't really put my mind forward and say, hey,
Right.
I want to do this and that and the other. Or I go back. It's nice to look back, but it doesn't affect me, influence me that much. What I'm really interested in is the present. What am I doing today? Am I having a good health? Am I having a good time with the friends and the people that, it's my priority, it's my values. And that's how I see it.
Couldn't agree more. Let's do the things you like to do with people you like to do it with. And that's what we're doing. It is kind of fun every once in a while to look up the mountain and go, a long way to go, but I'm not worried about it either. So
we all always focus on the current moment. So whether we are on, book 100 or book 1000, if we continue to look at the present, whether that's 2000, 5000, or whatever the case may be, that's doable, because you don't look forward and say, hey, that's a monumental task you have to do. Because You're not. I'm just taking one day at a time, day by day, bird by bird.
Bird by bird.
I think we did that one.
I don't think we did. I think we did that on our anti-library one night. I don't think we've actually. I'm pretty sure we haven't done bird by bird.
Okay.
No, the bird by bird, right?
Day by day, bird by
bird. On to the book for today. So book 57. Yes. It's a book called Just Kids by Patti Smith. Do you know who Patti Smith is by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually wasn't really familiar with her. I had, when I started this whole project, I just asked for recommendations from people randomly on social networks and stuff. And one of my friends was like, hey, I really like this book, Just Kids by Patti Smith. And I was like, oh, sure. I mean, whatever. This is what this journey is about, is, it's your magical learning. I'll read anything. So,
right.
So I, if somebody recommended it and said they liked it and got value out of it, I was like, yeah, I'm in. So that was how I ended up actually doing this book. So what it's about, I didn't know anything about Patti Smith before I started this book. I didn't even know who she was or anything like that. But so Patti Smith is a poet, a musician, an artist. She does a lot of things. I think her heyday was probably like the 70s and 80s or something along those lines. The story is a memoir that she wrote about her relationship with her boyfriend, then became her best friend, who became her lifelong soulmate. His name's Robert Mapplethorpe. He was a famous artist himself. It's about a book when they met as kids in New York City. So she had moved to New York City from some small town and kind of just didn't have anywhere to go, any money, to nowhere to stay. And she ended up meeting Robert one of her first weeks as she was in the city, sleeping in the park or something like that. I can't remember exactly the details of it. But anyway, they ended up connecting early on in her time there. And then the rest of the story is about them as kids and, their journey together and, falling in love with each other and living at the Chelsea Hotel and going to Max's Kansas City diner with all the other artists and stuff like that, and going to the factory with Andy Warhol and that whole scene in the 60s and 70s in New York City. And Robert was gay, actually. Ended up becoming, I guess he was probably bisexual. He was dating Patti for a while, and then he ended up,
maybe he was confused
or whatever. They ended up becoming just like really close friends and lifelong companions instead of actual romantic partners. And eventually, actually, Robert died of AIDS in the early 90s or something like that, as one of the, the AIDS epidemic was spreading across the country, especially in the gay population. He was one of those people that succumbed to that. So Patti promised him that she would write the story. So she wrote the story. That's what the story is about. It's about their relationship and their life together, the things they went through. It was a cool story. I learned a lot. Of unique person, and I really enjoyed it. I would recommend this book. A good one. But on to the reflection. Any questions about this?
No, I think we got it.
Oh, perfect. So the reflection title of this one is kind of unique and interesting. At least I think it is. I titled this one, "The Geography of Genius plus Loonshots equals Just Kids." and I'll explain a little bit. So I already gave you the background of the story, but what I mean by this title is we just went through Loonshots. We haven't gone through, a couple of days ago, we went through Loonshots, the book by Safi Bahcall. And we haven't gone through yet Geography of Genius, but it was a book that I've read in this journey along the way. So I'll kind of describe a little bit of the two of them. This is a great story.
Did we did something earlier that has to do with the Geography of Genius? Or something about the happiness?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I think we touched on that in the previous episodes, right?
I'm sure we probably did. All these things kind of blur together and blend together.
Yeah, but yeah. So one of the things I want to point out is if we haven't talked about it, referencing it is gonna take some explanation.
I'm gonna explain it in the reflection. So
okay.
This story was an amazing story, and the improbability of it, right? Like Robert Mapplethorpe was actually a famous artist in his own right. Patti Smith was a famous musician, a famous artist, a famous poet, did a lot of things, right? These two people randomly met in this mecca of New York City at the time, of just a random collision with each other, ended up growing up together, ended up meeting all these new people, going to all these different places. The infrastructure that was established, and this was not a chance. Like the probabilities of these two becoming people that we talk about today are just so few and far between and slim and none. So like what I loved about this book is when I was reading it, I was hearing things that I would never have heard before, because I was referring back to some of the books that I'd already read. And I was kind of breaking down the story of how this even came to be in my mind as I was reading this. I couldn't help but think of the Geography of Genius plus Loonshots equals Just Kids, right? And I'll explain what I mean by that.
Or the reverse.
Or the reverse. No, actually, I think it is that order. It's got to be the Geography of Genius first plus Loonshots. So in the book, The Geography of Genius by Eric Weiner, he talks about certain places and how the physical geography of a place can bring out genius. And I saw all these conditions as the story went on, as Patti was talking about how her and Robert initially first met. They would go to places like Max's Kansas City, which was this famous little diner that all these really, like at the time, were unknown people. They'd all get together to hang out, right? And they'd all meet each other and connect, and they talk about stuff that they like to do and share stories about their art that they were creating and encouraged each other and helped each other. And then they would go to places like CBGB, that now we all know what CBGB is, but when this was starting, this was like a little hole in the wall punk rock place that nobody had ever heard of, that these kids would go to. They would have a place to show their stuff. And then they would go to the Chelsea Hotel that offered them all free places to live if they gave art and stuff like that. I've actually personally never been to New York City, but I bet the Chelsea Hotel, if it still exists, they probably could never afford to live there anymore, because like the whole entire, Manhattan area is like super expensive, and cost of living. Like you couldn't just be a struggling artist to go, squat in a hotel and pay them in art, kind of thing. Like the patronage of wealthy artists or wealthy New Yorkers that were supporting these artists at the time. Like all these conditions, are like, I mean, that's what I was hearing the entire story as I was hearing Patti talk about their incredible journey together. They had no money. They had no idea what they were doing. They just kept going, and the geography and all the people around them and that the life, that was going on around them sustained them and kept them going through this whole entire process, them to ultimately get to where they got to. So then this brings me to the second half of the equation, which is the loonshot, side of everything. So as we've talked about in a previous reflection earlier of volume being the key from the book originals, the loonshots are fostering that ecosystem, the conditions to be able to create art and to produce a lot of art, right? Well, I mean, there's a literal loonshot factory that was developing at this time. That was Andy Warhol's The Factory. Have you ever heard of The Factory before with Andy Warhol?
No.
It was like a warehouse that Andy Warhol bought, and he was like, people can come and just live here, stay here, produce art, and I'm going to give you guys the infrastructure to go create art and do whatever you want to do, right? So he created a literal loonshot factory in this little tiny Geography of Genius mecca with all these little things that were going on where people like Robert and Patti could thrive, right? Like now, why did Robert and Patti thrive? I have no idea. The Black Swan kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's just totally random. But it was, for me, when I was hearing the story, it was about the conditions that I was hearing. It was about all the infrastructure that was put into place. It was about all the things that were going on to even bring this story to life, to even make it a possibility in this world. And for me, that's what I was hearing and seeing as I read this entire book. And I was kind of like fascinated by it. I was like, man, it's such an improbable story of like all the things they went through. They went through an insane amount of stuff. They were broke. They had no money. They had no, they were sick all the time. They had no health care. They had no nothing. Like, I mean, literally, they didn't have any clothes. Like, I mean, they were just like living life together as like homeless people, basically. And somehow they became who they became. Like, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like, what a crazy story. So
Right.
to sum this all up, though, at the end of the day, this is what we're hoping to create in the club and ecosystem in a lot of ways, right? To bring people together and to give people the infrastructure and the ecosystem to create and to live their values and to survive and thrive. And eventually magic will happen. Like, art will be created. Patti Smith will become known in this world, right? And we'll all go, oh, yeah, Patti Smith. Like, yeah, we know who Patti Smith is. Yeah, oh yeah, Robert Mapplethorpe. We know who that is. So that was my reflection from this book. Like, love to get your thoughts.
So for me, I think you describing the factory, it reminds me of Clubney.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's essentially what we want to do is, Clubney is equal, I guess, just adults or just
kids. Yeah.
just you. So for me, I have not read the Geography of Genius, but I'm assuming that Eric is referencing there are certain places where the geniuses are sprouting. Yes. And he probably going to mention something about the conditions rather than the actual locations. Am I right?
No, he actually talks about the locations.
So if that's the case, then I would disagree with him in terms of the location. I think it's the conditions. It's just a coincidence that the condition happens to be at that particular geography, like longitude and latitude locations. Right.
We'll talk about geography. Let's not debate geography of genius, I guess, in this one, because that's another one to come. But I agree. That'll
right, be because the reason why I brought it up because that's the reflection title. So I want to understand what it is that makes you the kids, right? And so for me, I think in taking the reflection title plus the questions like what key ingredients are you missing to turn your art into reality? For me, it may be counterintuitive. It is what you need to take out.
Interesting.
You need to take out your stress, your values that you don't value, that people tell you need to value, things that you need to do, right? You must do this. This is your responsibility. Once you take out all the stuff that's not you, then you get to be you.
Right.
It is taking away everything that is not you and let you be you. And to me, that becomes the ingredient for you to be creative. Patti and Robert Mapplethorpe doesn't have anything. They don't have clothes, they don't have anything, right? And they don't need to be responsible. They don't need to, hey, I have to do this, I have to do that. I have to show up for the meeting. I have to write reports. It allows them to be them. So they are more of themselves than we are of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it allows them to be themselves. And then the second half of that formula is what Andy Warhol did for them, is create these conditions. Say, look, I'm giving you a factory. Go in there and do whatever you think is good for you, or that's what inspires you. And so I think, that's why I want to kind of understand the geography of genius and Loonshots, because, so for us, for me, it's almost like the company in essence of these two things, like Loonshots, like, do a lot of stuff, just do stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. Create whatever you want to create.
And then geography of genius, to me, it reminds me of the, like you said, it's at the factory where you provide them with the infrastructure, the conditions for people to be creative, the safety net, for lack of a better word, to be able to not have to worry about it and focus on being the creative that you want to be free to explore. I think the exploration is the biggest part of this art, right? You have to be able to explore. If you don't explore, then, whatever you're in a system, whether that's the corporate world, whatever, they have a system. So they have these, I guess, constraints. So within the constraints, there's only very predictable outcome that you can have. There's no, there's no out of this experience that you're not going to get something that here, this is really radical. You can't get that because you're already inside a system that is designed to kind of make you turn out a certain way. So in order for you to be the Patti and the Robert Mapplethorpe, you have to take away all these constraints, all these guidelines, all these rules, all this red tape.
Yeah.
that people put on, whether that's corporate, in life, in social as well. Because social is the one that it is creating these barriers, right? Because hey, you expect to do this, hey, you expect to do that, hey, you expect to behave a certain way, and that creates the confine for you. You become a predictable output, a predictable result, predictable outcome of the system. So there's nothing new, there's nothing out of the box.
I agree. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. And it's funny you say that, because like Patti wasn't even she's what she's most well known for is her music. Like she wasn't even a musician. Like she literally was just around these people and they asked her to start to sing for some stuff. And they were like, oh, you're pretty good. And then she liked to write poetry and stuff like that. And she was performing poetry. And like the Patti Smith becoming Patti Smith is like, it's impossible without all these other things that were going on. Like you mentioned infrastructure and support and things like that. Like that's what we're trying to provide within the club and ecosystem. You know, it's not for like social security or like a safety net kind of thing, like welfare, but like just make sure that your needs are met, you know, so you can go great. Like, but have like, the thing is, all I could think about a lot during this, when I was reading this book, was all the other people that were at Max's Kansas Cities and the Chelsea Hotel and all these other artists that we don't know about, right? Like these people, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know why they fell off or why we don't know them or why, like, that's what I could think about the whole entire time is like, if there was some more systematized way to harness what these people were trying to do. They all had very much shared values. I mean, that was what this was all about. I mean, they were all trying to live, you know, the whole 60s peace, love, whatever the hell that, you know, that thing was. And that's fine. They had a lot of shared values. They were all helping each other to create, you know, more and more, but like they were doing it the hard way, but they still made it.
It's about that conditions. I was saying, my hypothesis still remains, because you're talking about, if you are able to take away things that is not you, then you're able to create. But you can take it away for 1 week, for 2 months, and then you take it back. Well, it's going to go back to the predictable output that I'm talking about. So you have to take it away and be that way.
Right.
These people may say, well, I joined these factory for a short period of time, right? And after that, I got a job, right? I got, you know, I follow the rules of the corporate world. I follow social norms and expectations and yada, yada, right? And so you get back into the system. You are assimilating what's not you. Therefore, you're not going to continue to be like Patti and Robert, right? So not everybody's going to choose the same thing. I mean, they have the ability to say, hey, I'm going to take the red pill or the blue pill, right? So they can choose at any time to take in things that are not themselves. Therefore, they're not going to be well known, because, well, everybody does it. When everybody does it, it becomes noise. I mean, if it's a predictable outcome, then everybody is going to have that. So you can't stand out. So who's going to know you?
There's a formula here. Like, I mean, there is, I don't think that people see it a lot. You and I see the formula. Like, it's people that know themselves, that know what they want to do, and to give them space to create, but with a shared infrastructure.
Right. You mentioned the conditions, to provide security. And there's certain conditions that give it the best chance.
Exactly.
Producing,
like building a garden. Be a gardener, not a Moses, right? Like seeing the conditions that we need to create to bring out more Patties and Roberts in the world, and to let them thrive, like to let them, you know, to do the thing.
It is not only the fact that you have an infrastructure and the fact that you're free to choose, but it also needs to have that person know themselves, know their core values, know what they're doing, know why it makes them fulfill. So it's not just creating the environment, but also that entity must also be able to do what I'm saying, and you need to take away things that is not you, right? If you're not a early lock, right, then don't try to be an early lock. If you're a night owl, and be a night owl. Do the best work at a time when you're the best, not because everybody say, hey, you have to get up at 5 a.m. If you're not an early lock, getting up at 5 a.m. is going to forcing you until you're not 100%. So what's the point? But if you're really good when you're at 11 or 12 a.m., right, then wake up and do that work that time. Because
Darren, our good friend Darren Hardy, the other day in his morning Darren Daily message was talking about what brings happiness in general. He was like, look, at the end of the day, it's about doing what you want to do with who you want to do it and how you want to do it. That's exactly what you're saying. It's like, do whatever you want to do with whoever you want to do it with and how you want to do it. That is what Robert did. Robert had a very unique vision of this world. He had a lot of, his life shaped a lot of his art, and he went and did something that was really innovative, out of the box, and kind of really, was a shock value, I guess. People weren't ready for that kind of in your face, BDSM kind of stuff. It's the art that he did and things like that. That was what he'd spent time creating. And that took a long time for him to get to that point in time. That's the only reason why we know who Robert Mapplethorpe is. I mean, he struggled with a lot in his life, but without people like Patti, without infrastructures, without all this other stuff, like he probably would have died, honestly. It's just crazy. It's wild. Like there is a formula here and we can help people. It's the bottom line. So I agree with everything you're saying. And I know that you and I are in alignment. We're going to figure this thing out. We're going to do this.
Yes.
Shit. Yeah.
So Clubney, in a nutshell, we are refining this formula, right? We are refining it, and so far it is working great. We want to refine it even more as more people go into the company, but we are taking the formula and tweaking it and take what's good and leave what's bad, and eventually the formula is going to get better and better. Exactly. We'll figure this thing out. The geography of genius and all the other things, and volume is the key, and all these rules, all these lessons that we learned along the way, we'll figure this thing out. So wrapping it up for the day, though, good discussion. Question we can leave with everybody is, what key ingredients are you missing to turn your art in reality? What do you think the most important elements for you to be creative? Yeah, for me, I think it's giving me more time to go do the stuff that I really want to do. I do it today as much as I possibly can, but there's this big albatross in the middle of my day that goes back to what I'm saying is you got to get rid of things at night. Exactly. Yeah. So I know what I need to do. So with that, we will leave you with the questions, and we'll see you on the next episode.